A child of Warsaw, Marie Curie, born Maria Sklodowska on November 7, 1867, entered the world in Warsaw, Poland, at a time when her country was under Russian domination. Her father, Władysław, was a respected teacher of mathematics and physics, while her mother, Bronislaw, was the headmistress of a prestigious girls' school. From the very beginning, Maria was surrounded by books, intellectual discussions, and the spirit of education. Yet, her early life was not free from hardship. When she was just 10 years old, she lost her mother to tuberculosis, and not long before, one of her sisters had died from typhus. These tragedies weighed heavily on young Maria, but rather than break her spirit, they fueled her determination to rise above suffering. Despite restrictions on Polish culture and education by the Russian authorities, Maria excelled in her studies. She developed a love for science and mathematics, often reading late into the night. Her brilliance was evident, but her opportunities were limited as universities in Poland did not admit women. It was in this environment, filled with both hardship and intellectual curiosity, that the seeds of her extraordinary journey were planted. Dreams beyond borders. Maria's hunger for knowledge could not be confined to Warsaw. Together with her sister Bronia, she formed a pact. Maria would work as a governess to support Bronia's medical studies in Paris, and later, Bronia would help Maria follow her dreams. For years, Maria toiled away as a governess, teaching children by day and studying secretly at night. She never gave up her scientific aspirations. Eventually, when Bronia completed her studies and married, she invited Maria to join her in Paris. In 1891, Maria Sklodowska left Warsaw and traveled to the City of Light, Paris. It was here, at the Sorbonne University, that she enrolled in physics and mathematics. The transition was far from easy. She lived in a tiny, unheated attic, often going hungry, but her willpower never faltered. She would later recall that sometimes she was so cold that she studied wrapped in all the clothes she owned. Yet, her dedication bore fruit. Within just a few years, Maria, now calling herself Marie Curie, earned degrees in both physics and mathematics, emerging as one of the brightest scientific minds of her generation. Meeting Pierre Curie. In Paris, Marie's brilliance caught the attention of fellow scientists. In 1894, she was introduced to Pierre Curie, a physicist known for his pioneering work in magnetism and crystals. Their meeting would change not only their lives, but also the course of science forever. Pierre was quiet, thoughtful, and deeply passionate about research. Marie, equally devoted to her studies, found in him both an intellectual partner and a kindred spirit. Their conversations often stretched late into the night, filled with discussions about physics, chemistry, and the mysteries of the natural world. In 1895, they married in a simple ceremony. Marie refused to wear a wedding gown. Instead, she wore a dark blue dress, the same one she used in her laboratory. Their honeymoon was equally unconventional, a bicycle trip through the French countryside. But beyond romance, this was a marriage of minds. Pierre and Marie worked side by side, united by their love of discovery and their tireless devotion to science. Their laboratory was modest, even primitive by modern standards, but it became the birthplace of some of the greatest scientific breakthroughs in history. The birth of radioactivity. The Curie's attention soon turned to the mysterious phenomenon recently discovered by Henri Becquerel: uranium salts that emitted invisible rays capable of passing through solid objects. Fascinated, Marie began systematic research. Through countless hours of experiments, she realized that this radiation was not a property of a chemical compound, but came from the atoms themselves, a revolutionary concept at the time. She coined a new term for this phenomenon: radioactivity. In 1898, after painstaking research, the Curies discovered a new element, which Marie named polonium, after her beloved homeland of Poland. Later that same year, they discovered yet another element, radium. Extracting even a small amount of these elements required processing tons of a mineral called pitchblende. The work was exhausting, the laboratory conditions harsh, and yet Marie persisted, driven by unshakable determination. The discovery of radium and polonium was more than a scientific milestone. It opened the door to new fields of physics and medicine, forever altering humanity's understanding of matter and energy. Triumph and tragedy. The Curie's groundbreaking discoveries brought them international fame. In 1903, they, along with Henri Becquerel, were awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics for their research on radiation. Marie Curie became the first woman ever to receive a Nobel Prize, a historic moment for women in science. But success was accompanied by hardship. Pierre and Marie's health began to decline due to prolonged exposure to radioactive substances. At the time, little was known about the dangers of radiation, and they often handled radioactive materials with no protection. Then, tragedy struck. In 1906, Pierre Curie was killed in a street accident in Paris, run over by a horse-drawn cart. The loss was devastating for Marie. She was left not only a widow, but also the mother of 2 young daughters. Yet, in the face of unimaginable grief, Marie displayed remarkable resilience. Determined to honor Pierre's legacy, she took over his professorship at the Sorbonne, becoming the university's first female professor. Her journey of discovery was far from over. A pioneer in medicine. After Pierre's death, Marie Curie threw herself entirely into her research. She continued her work on the properties of radium and its potential applications. Soon, scientists and doctors realized that radiation could be used in the treatment of tumors and cancer. Marie became a leading advocate for the medical use of radium. Her laboratory produced radium salts that were distributed to hospitals across Europe for therapeutic purposes. She not only advanced physics and chemistry, but also laid the foundation for modern radiation therapy, saving countless lives. At the Sorbonne, she inspired a new generation of students, both men and women, proving that a woman could hold her own in the highest echelons of science. Her lectures were rigorous, filled with detailed experiments, yet her presence commanded admiration and respect. Marie was no longer just a scientist. She had become a symbol of perseverance, a beacon of knowledge, and a pioneer whose work directly touched human lives. A second Nobel Prize. In 1911, Marie Curie achieved what no one had ever done before. She was awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for her discovery of radium and polonium, and for her groundbreaking research into their chemical properties. This second Nobel Prize cemented her status as one of the greatest scientists in history. Yet, her triumph was not without controversy. The French press, often skeptical of her as a foreign woman in science, attacked her personal life. Rumors spread about her private relationships, and she faced hostility from those who believed a woman should not stand at the forefront of such achievements. Despite the criticism, Marie never allowed herself to be distracted. She remained focused on her work, declaring that science demanded devotion and that personal slander could not diminish the truth of discovery. By winning 2 Nobel Prizes in 2 different scientific fields, she secured a place in history as a singular genius. She was not just Pierre Curie's partner. She was a pioneer in her own right. War and sacrifice. When World War I erupted in 1914, Marie Curie faced a new challenge. She recognized that X-ray technology, powered by radium and portable machines, could save thousands of wounded soldiers on the battlefield. Marie organized a fleet of mobile radiography units, later known as Little Curies. She personally trained doctors, nurses, and technicians to operate these X-ray machines. With her teenage daughter, Irene, at her side, she traveled to the front lines, bringing life-saving medical technology to French soldiers. Her efforts saved countless lives, and for her service, she was later awarded honors from the French government. Yet, despite her immense contribution, she refused to profit from her discoveries. She famously declined to patent the radium isolation process, believing that scientific knowledge belonged to humanity, not to individuals. During those dark years of war, Marie Curie proved not only her brilliance as a scientist, but also her courage and compassion as a humanitarian, teaching the next generation. After the war, Marie Curie returned to academic life. She founded the Radium Institute in Paris in 1914, which quickly became a world center for research in radioactivity, physics, and medicine. Under her leadership, the institute trained some of the most brilliant scientists of the 20th century. Her daughter, Irene, would later win a Nobel Prize herself, continuing the Curie legacy. Through her work at the Radium Institute, Marie ensured that her discoveries would extend far beyond her own lifetime. Students recalled her as a strict but inspiring teacher, deeply devoted to truth and scientific integrity. She demanded hard work, but she also provided encouragement, especially for young women entering the sciences. For them, she was not just a mentor, she was living proof that women could rise to the very peak of intellectual achievement. Honors and recognition. By the 1920s, Marie Curie had become an international icon. She traveled widely, giving lectures, receiving awards, and meeting leaders around the world. In 1921, she toured the United States, where President Warren G. Harding presented her with a precious gift, a gram of pure radium purchased through donations from American women. Everywhere she went, she was celebrated not only for her scientific brilliance, but also for her humility. Despite her fame, she lived simply, cared little for luxury, and devoted her energy entirely to science and service. Universities, academies, and governments honored her with medals, degrees, and membership. Yet, she never lost sight of her purpose. To her, recognition was secondary. Discovery and truth were her real rewards. By this time, Marie Curie was no longer just a scientist. She had become a global figure, a woman whose intellect, perseverance, and humanity inspired millions across continents. The burden of discovery. As the years passed, the consequences of Marie Curie's tireless work began to show. She handled radium and other radioactive substances daily, often without protective equipment, not because of negligence, but because the dangers of radiation were not fully understood at the time. Her notebooks, laboratory coats, and even personal belongings became contaminated with radioactivity, objects so dangerous that they remain radioactive to this day. Marie frequently suffered from fatigue, weakness, and painful ailments, but she dismissed them as minor inconveniences. Her devotion to science blinded her to the risks she endured. This silent burden, the invisible toll of radiation, was a price she would ultimately pay with her life. Yet, she never regretted her work. For her, science was not merely a profession. It was a calling, a higher duty to humanity. A legacy continued through family. Marie Curie's devotion to science was not hers alone. It became the legacy of her family. Her elder daughter, Irene Joliot-Curie, worked alongside her at the Radium Institute, continuing groundbreaking research in chemistry and physics. Irene, together with her husband, Frederick Joliot, later discovered artificial radioactivity, a discovery that earned them the 1935 Nobel Prize in chemistry. Thus, the Curie family became a dynasty of science, with 5 Nobel Prizes across 2 generations. It was a record unmatched in history. Marie's younger daughter, Eve, though not a scientist, honored her mother by writing a deeply moving biography, Madame Curie, which introduced her mother's life to the world in human terms. Through her children, Marie's influence extended into both science and literature, ensuring that her legacy would live far beyond her own work. The final years. In her later years, Marie Curie continued to work with unrelenting passion. Despite declining health, she remained at the Radium Institute, guiding research and mentoring young scientists. Her dedication never wavered, even as her body grew frail. By the early 1930s, her health had deteriorated severely. She was diagnosed with aplastic anemia, a condition linked directly to prolonged radiation exposure. The very discoveries that had brought her worldwide acclaim were now consuming her life. Yet, even in illness, Marie never expressed bitterness. She believed that suffering was a natural companion of discovery, that great truths demanded sacrifice. Her final writings remained filled with optimism about the future of science and its potential to heal and uplift humanity. Death and immortality. On July 4, 1934, Marie Curie passed away in Saint-Célimaz, France, at the age of 66. The world mourned the loss of a pioneer whose brilliance had reshaped modern science. Her funeral was modest, in accordance with her wishes. She was laid to rest beside her beloved husband Pierre in Soz, south of Paris. Yet, her story did not end there. In 1995, in recognition of her extraordinary contributions, her remains were moved to the Pantheon in Paris, the resting place of France's greatest heroes. She became the first woman to be honored in the Pantheon for her own achievements, not through association with a man. Her name, her discoveries, and her sacrifice became immortal, a symbol of human intellect and perseverance. The eternal legacy of Marie Curie. Today, Marie Curie's name resonates across the globe as one of the greatest scientific minds in history. Her discoveries laid the foundation for nuclear physics, cancer treatments, and advancements in medical technology. Hospitals, research institutions, and even chemical elements bear her name. But her legacy is not just scientific, it is human. She proved that gender was no barrier to genius, that perseverance could overcome poverty, prejudice, and tragedy. She inspired generations of women to pursue science and open doors in universities and laboratories that had long been closed. Marie Curie's life was more than a story of discovery. It was a story of courage, sacrifice, and devotion to truth. She gave her life for knowledge, and in doing so, she gave the world new hope. Her words echo through time. Nothing in life is to be feared. It is only to be understood. Now is the time to understand more, so that we may fear less. Indeed, her brilliance still shines, not only in the glow of radium, but in the hearts of all who continue the quest for knowledge.